Imagine standing on the barren, wind-swept highlands of Central Asia and looking out over a vast land that has endured the brutal storms of time for over 5,000 years. While world empires like ancient Rome, the Mongol Khanate, or the mighty British Empire rose with a loud roar and inevitably crumbled into dust, one constant remained in the heart of the Middle East: Iran. But how is it possible that a civilization overrun by the Greeks under Alexander the Great, the Arabs, the Mongols, and the proud Ottomans never lost its core identity? Was it the sheer luck of geography, or is there a deep cultural secret behind this unparalleled struggle for survival? The journey begins in the year 3000 BC, when the Elamites in the plains of Susa laid the first foundations and built a complex society that existed long before the pyramids of Gizeh were even a thought. These early inhabitants developed their own unique script and built monumental ziggurats that still rise from the desert sands today as silent witnesses of a forgotten world. But soon, the Medes were to descend from the misty mountains of the north and pave the way until finally the Persians under Cyrus the Great created the first true world empire in human history in the year 559 BC. Cyrus was no ordinary despot because he relied on religious tolerance and respect for local customs instead of total destruction, which laid the foundation for a national consciousness that would survive even the darkest centuries. Do you think that a people is only protected by high walls and sharp swords? No. The history of Iran teaches us the opposite. It is the enormous adaptability of the culture that acts as the strongest shield. When Alexander the Great reduced the magnificent residence of Persepolis to ashes and rubble in the year 330 BC, the end of Persian supremacy seemed to have finally come. But what happened instead? The Greek conquerors were so fascinated by the Persian administration, the magnificent court etiquette, and the fine art that in the end they became Persians themselves. Alexander wore Persian robes and requested his generals to marry local women, a fascinating pattern that would repeat throughout history. If you like these deep insights into the mechanisms of power, then subscribe to the channel now and activate the bell so you do not miss any of these journeys through time. After the slow decline of the Greek successor kingdoms, the Parthians took power, who were known as excellent horse archers and stopped the expansion of the Roman Empire to the east forever. Later, the Sassanids consolidated a Neo-Persian empire in the year 226 AD, which fought bitter border wars with Byzantium for centuries and brought Zoroastrianism as a state religion to full bloom. This era was marked by technological progress in irrigation and a chivalrous culture that would significantly influence later knighthood in Europe. But in the 7th century AD, the unthinkable happened. A completely new force from the hot desert of Arabia swept over the Sassanid Empire, which had been weakened by constant wars. The Arabs brought Islam and a completely new language, which many contemporary historians saw as the final death of ancient Persia. But was it really? The Persians did accept the new faith, but they by no means submitted to the Arabic culture. Instead, they soon occupied the highest offices in the Caliphate of Baghdad and made Persian the language of scholars, poets, and science. Without the Persian mathematicians and astronomers of this time, the golden age of Islam would never have been possible, for it was they who preserved and expanded the ancient heritage. The country became the intellectual forge of the entire world while the rest of Europe sank into the Dark Ages. But the greatest test was yet to come when in the year 1220, the unstoppable rider hordes of Genghis Khan appeared on the horizon. The Mongols left literal mountains of skulls and burned down libraries that contained centuries of ancient knowledge, a trauma that cut deep into the collective soul of the people. But here too, the historical miracle repeated itself. The Mongol rulers converted to Islam after a few generations and became the greatest patrons of Persian architecture and delicate miniature painting. How can a people culturally dominate its brutal conquerors to such an extent that the occupiers end up defending the traditions of the defeated? It is this incredible power of assimilation that led Iran through the turmoils of the Safavids in the 16th century, who consolidated the country as a Shiite major power and held it against the mighty Ottoman Empire. In this time, Isfahan was created with its blue mosques, which are still referred to as half the world today, and amaze travelers from all over the globe. In the 19th century, however, the country fell into the dangerous maelstrom of the so-called Great Game between the Russian Empire and Great Britain. Both powers tried to use Iran as a buffer state and exploit its resources, while the Qajar dynasty could only with great effort hold the country together. In the 20th century, it was finally the black gold, the oil, which awakened the desires of the world powers and led to a coup d'état steered from the outside against the democratically elected prime minister in the year 1953. This moment changed the relationship with the West forever and sowed the seeds for the later Great Revolution. The year 1979 then marked a radical break with the millennia-old monarchy and led to the founding of the Islamic Republic, which shapes the entire region politically to this day. The subsequent 8-year war against Iraq in the 80s of the 20th century claimed almost 1 million lives and isolated the country internationally almost completely, but the borders remained virtually unchanged despite the enormous sacrifices. The people in Iran have learned to survive in a world of constant threat by cultivating their cultural identity as an inner place of retreat. Today, in the year 2026, Iran once again stands at the center of global tensions and massive geopolitical shifts between East and West. Between harsh sanctions, great technological pride, and deep internal tensions, the pressing question arises: will this civilization also survive the complex challenges of the 21st century? When one looks at the last 5,000 years in detail, the answer seems clear. Iran is not simply a nation-state, but a cultural idea that is stronger than any invading army. The mighty mountains of the Zagros and the wide hostile deserts of the plateau have seen many come and go, but the language of Ferdowsi and the ruins of Pasargadae still tell the same story of pride and resilience. What do you think? Is it the geographical isolation or the absolute will for cultural self-assertion that makes this country so indestructible? History is far from being finished and will surely surprise us many more times. One must never forget that the Persians often defeated their invaders not with the sword, but with the spirit, by making their own way of life the desirable norm. Will we see this dynamic repeat itself in the future, or have the rules of world politics fundamentally changed? Time will tell, but one thing remains certain. Anyone who wants to understand Iran must dive deep into the layers of this 5,000-year-old history. Every invasion left traces, but none could extinguish or permanently break the core of the Persian soul. It is an eternal cycle of destruction and rebirth that is second to none, and teaches us that true power lies not only in weapons, but in the permanence of culture. The monuments of Naqsh-e Rostam are still firmly anchored in the rock and look down on a world that is constantly changing, while the roots of this country reach deeper than most empires of our earth could ever dream of. To understand the survival of this land is to understand that a people can lose their capital, their king, and their freedom, yet remain undefeated as long as their language and their stories remain alive in the hearts of the common people. From the high peaks of the Alborz to the shores of the Persian Gulf, the land breathes history and reminds us that every empire is but a fleeting moment in the face of a civilization that refuses to fade away. This is the true legacy of a nation that has seen the rise and fall of dozens of conquerors and yet stands firm, welcoming the future with the same quiet strength it used to face the past 5,000 years.